With trends in manufacturing right now seeming to be spiraling all over the place, it seems like shops are finding themselves in one of two camps. Either you have way more work than you know what to do with, or you're hungry and out there looking to get more work in the door. What's up guys? Ian Sandusky from Lakewood Machine Tool back here again for Practical Machinist. And today on Shop Talk, we're gonna be covering some pitfalls and things you should look out for if you find yourself in a scenario where you have too much work. But before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications below to make sure you never miss a video. Let's get into it. Okay guys, so as promised today on Shop Talk, we are going to be talking about something that sometimes shops are going to deal with. You know, as I said, right now shops at the moment tend to be falling into one of two camps. And this is just based on what I've seen on social media, based on conversations I've had out there in my area, and based on, you know, what I'm seeing on the Practical Machinist forums. On one hand, we have shops that are absolutely full to the brim with work. They're finding it very difficult to keep up. They are overloaded. They don't know what to do with all of it. On the other hand, there are shops that are experiencing some lean times right now, and their order books are looking light. They're getting a bit hungry to get work in the door and experiencing that difficult situation. Today, we are going to be doing a deep dive and quick mine on information that I found over the years to be helpful when you're dealing with a situation where you have too much work. I think this is important to talk about because I feel like a lot of the information that I've talked about and a lot of the information you see out there mainly pertains to what do you do to get work in the door. And that's a scenario that obviously, you know, a lot of people focus on and creates a lot of stress for people. What I don't see out there a lot is, you know, some practical guidance and advice for when your shop has too much work. So let's say you find yourself in a situation where you have too much work. The order book is overflowing. You have skids of materials stacked up in your unit. You're doing everything you can to get work out the door. Maybe you're worried about getting stuff out late. You're having a hard time keeping on top of it. Maybe you're running double shifts. You know, all these things that come with having too much work. I think from the outside, this can sound like a dream scenario, especially if you're a shop right now that is dealing with some leaner times. If you are experiencing some stress from trying to keep your shop afloat. And right off the bat, guys, I'm gonna say this scenario, although we're gonna be talking about some of the negatives and things you should look for, right off the bat, this is the better scenario to be in of the two. I'm not gonna lie to you and say, oh yeah, you know, you drive your truck down the street, you see a shop that's dead and you say, man, I wish I could be that. I think it would be disingenuous to say that people want to have no work. So this is a good scenario to be in. That said, just because you have a lot of work in the door doesn't mean that it's a no stress scenario. It just means that it's a different kind of stress than having no work. But, you know, let's just be honest, it's a better kind of stress to have than having no work. As someone who has been in both these camps, obviously this is the preferable situation. So do try to keep that in mind when I'm talking about strategies to mitigate this. I'm not trying to say you should be less busy. I'm just trying to give you some things that worked for me over the years and some things that didn't work for me to help get you through it. So the first thing you should watch out for, number one, is that if you find yourself in a scenario where you have more work than you know what to do with, is make sure that you are under promising and over delivering rather than over promising and under delivering. And I got that right. Do you want to know the number one way to take your shop from rocking and rolling to absolutely dead faster than you can believe it? Overpromise, underdeliver. Promise everything in this scenario to everyone on a timeline that you know you can't reach. Promise, you know, a level of quality that you know you don't have the time or the amount of skilled people to do. Promise inspections that you know you don't have time to do. Promise timelines you know can't happen due to your supplier network. All of these things, that is the quickest way to take your shop from super busy to dead. and this is not something you should do. I've seen this, you've seen this. I think we've all dealt with a vendor that has done this to us. I think a lot of us who've been in this trade for any length of time have definitely done this before and made this mistake. So I think a lot of you guys are gonna understand where I'm coming from, but let's just illustrate it for the sake of people who have maybe not experienced this kind of scenario. So let's say as a machine shop, I wanna go out and get some work done by an outside vendor. So maybe I want to get some material in, or maybe I wanna get some laser cutting done, or powder coating, or anodizing. Something I can't do in-house that I need to go buy outside. So I talk to my vendor, let's say it's anodizing. I talk to my anodizing vendor and I say, hey, listen, I got these 100 parts I need anodized. What's your timeline? Oh, 2 weeks. Yeah, we're always 2 weeks, so it's gonna be 2 weeks. Perfect. So I go and talk to my customer and say, hey, listen, parts are done, they're going out for anodize, it's gonna be 2 weeks. They say, great, 2 weeks works well, but we need these within that timeline. Cool. 2 weeks go by, I call follow up and say, hey, can I come pick up my parts? They say, do you know what? We're really busy right now. Haven't got to them yet. It'll be like another 2 weeks. Okay, now I need to go to my customer. Hey, listen, they're busy, so it's gonna take longer. My customer starts to get upset with me. I start to get upset with my vendor. Why did you not tell me it was gonna take longer? You know how busy you are. 2 more weeks go by. Oh, you know what? We're still really busy. It's gonna be another week. And so on and so on. And you get in a scenario where you're feeling dragged by your vendor. You're upset, your customer's upset. You don't feel like a priority. Some vendors, when they get so busy, you can feel like a burden to them, which is a feeling you never want to feel when you're paying someone for a service. And you get in that scenario. That's a perfect example of someone over-promising and under-delivering. They promise 2 weeks, they deliver in 4. That's the problem, right? And if you've ever been in this scenario, be honest, would you use that vendor again if they did that to you? There's a lot of vendors out there, just as there's a lot of machine shops out there. So if you're getting bad service and you're dealing with a vendor who is not being truthful on their timelines, they're not doing what they said they were gonna do, unless you have a very close, very long working relationship with that vendor, there's a good chance you're gonna go somewhere else. Unless there's the only game in town, you're probably gonna try someone else. And that exact same scenario happens when you're a machine shop and you do this. They're probably gonna go somewhere else if you're constantly breaking your timelines. Maybe you only have to do it once. You do something bad enough on a timeline, that customer may say, you know what, we're just not using you anymore. This happens. The biggest thing you need to do when you get overloaded is maintain trust. Trust that you'll deliver on time. Trust that you do what you say you're gonna do in terms of quality and inspections. And trust that you're being honest about your limitations. And how do you develop trust? Honesty. If you're overloaded with work, your customers right off the bat are probably not gonna be happy when you're like, hey, listen, we have a 3 to 4 week typical lead time. Do you know what? Right now I'm overloaded. It's gonna be 6 to 8. Are your customers gonna be excited to hear that? No, they're probably gonna be disappointed, and I feel like a lot of us don't want to disappoint our customers, so we say, oh yeah, it's 3 to 4 weeks. It's not. However, if you are being upfront with your customers, being honest about the state of your timelines, about, hey, listen, you know what, this has some really tight features that we need to inspect. Our inspection department's loaded down right now. It's gonna be another 2 weeks past the typical timeline to make sure we inspect these. They're not gonna be super happy about that, but they're gonna appreciate that you're being honest about it. Might they go somewhere else if you tell them my timelines are longer than usual? Yeah, they might. I've done this to my customers before where I've had to say, listen, you want this in 2 weeks, I can't do it in 2 weeks. They go get it done somewhere else. But they're not going to have their timelines pushed back now because I was trying to hit something that I knew I couldn't hit. It all kind of goes back to honesty as well too, because if you're honest about the way you price things, you're honest about your timelines, you're honest about your quality, you're not giving them any reason to doubt you. So even though you may not get this job from them, maybe the next one will work out. If you're honest about what you can do and can't do, they can make an informed decision, and then they can, come back or not. If you lie or are dishonest or overpromise, now you are a liar, and they definitely don't want to come back. It kind of reminds me of a scenario in like a romantic relationship where, you know that person that doesn't like that when their significant other goes out without them. Why do they maybe feel that way? Because they're going to find out that the person they're with is not treating them very well and there are better options out there. That same kind of dynamic can exist with machine shops and manufacturers where, you get very, I need to keep, even though I can't deliver on it, I need to keep these customers with me because if they go somewhere else, they're going to see I'm not that good. If you're doing everything you can to be good, you should have no reason to be afraid of your customers going somewhere else. Because at the end of the day, guys, they're probably getting quotes from other places anyways. They've probably worked with other machine shops. It's not something you should be afraid of. Once that's out of the way and you're being straight up with your customer base, what now? You should probably be in a situation where at least your timelines are manageable because you're giving people realistic timelines. So let's take that level of stress off the table. The next thing you should be looking at if you are in a scenario where you're overloaded is your customer base. And if you are overloaded, this can result in a situation where you're missing opportunities for potential other high-paying customers because you're so busy with what you have right now. And we've talked about this before in the 80-20 rule. There's a video on that here on the Practical Machinist YouTube, where there's nothing inherently wrong with dedicating a lot of your time, energy, and resources towards that 20% of your customer base that provides 80% of your revenues. Because you gotta remember the 80-20 rule, 20% does 80% of revenues, 20% is 80% of headaches, probably not the same 20%. The other 80% kind of fills in the rest. But if you're only focusing on that 20% and you let that rest of the 80% of your customer base slide, the problem is when that 20% of your customer base gets slow, and they will because everybody has ebbs and flows, all of a sudden you're gonna be scrambling because you've let this other 80% of your customer base drop. So when you're in a situation where you have a ton of work in the door, a good thing to do is to step back and actually reevaluate your customer base. Because if you make a couple steps, you could end up in a better scenario when you come out of this busy period than when you went into it. So if you're in this scenario, you wanna look at your customer base and say, do I have any smaller customers that, for lack of a better word, are a headache? Maybe they don't like to pay on time. Net 30 terms turn into net 60, turn into net 90. Maybe dealing with their accounts payable department is a huge headache, and believe me, that's a real thing. If you've ever dealt with some AP teams at some companies, it's difficult. Do they maybe always have unrealistic expectations for things? There's a lot of things that can make a customer, not a bad customer, but a headache customer. And if they're a small customer and you have a ton of work right now, it may be worth deprioritizing that customer. And notice that I'm saying deprioritize. The alternative to this is firing them as a customer. And short of anything that actually warrants firing as a customer, meaning we don't do work for you anymore, click, I don't think it's a good idea to fire customers. I do think it is a good idea to deprioritize customers at time. So if you are in a scenario where you have a ton of work, you have a couple of these customers that are just headaches that you don't do a ton of work for, now may be the time to, trying to rectify those situations. So if that customer is one that always pays net 60, net 90 when they're on net 30 terms, maybe now is the time to put them on COD, because you're in a scenario where either now they can shape up or ship out. Because if you're in a slow time, you're gonna be a lot more willing to put up with bad behavior from customers because it's either put up with the behavior or have no work. If you're in a good time, that's a really good opportunity to start trying to rectify situations that may turn into a situation where you don't have that customer anymore. If you go to a customer and say, hey, listen, your AP team is uncommunicative, I can't get information out of them, you're late on payments, I gotta put you on COD for 6 months until you show you can pay, and then we can look at putting net 30 terms back. That customer may say, all right, see you later, and move on to the next guy. If you are in a scenario where you don't have a lot of work, that can be a big blow, because even if they're a pain, there's still work. In a situation where you have an abundance of work and a lot of options, you can kind of weather that a little more. And you know what, if they drop off, well, you still have time while you have all this work to find another customer. Or maybe you don't even have another customer in the wings, you kind of deprioritize a couple, Now you may have a little more breathing room to look at new quotes. Maybe you have a little more breathing room to do some sales work and start trying to build a better customer base. So by the time that busy time ends, and it always ends, you know, no shop is busy for the entire existence of their business. Now by the time that passes, you actually have a better, more solid, easy to deal with customer base than when you went into it. It's worth remembering too, guys, that I feel like a lot of times when we're in these super busy situations, it's easy to get lax. It's easy to get bloated. You know, it's when your purse strings aren't as tight, you can be a lot more willing to invest in machinery, invest in, you know, quality of life upgrades, and all those things are great, and you should do them when you have the money to do it. But the other important thing you should do when you're really busy is make sure you build the cushion in your business bank account. Good times are great, but they always end. There's always going to be a lean time at some point. If during those good times, you know, yeah, you invest in machinery, you do whatever, you make sure you're also squirreling away a cushion, you know, building your war chest to have some capital for when things get lean. Because if you're operating here, you're making this much money and you're spending this much money, when it goes to here, you're gonna have nothing left. And when it goes to here, that means you might have to lay people off. You may need to, and I've seen this, guys, sell machinery to pay the bills. I've seen companies where, and it's kind of at the inflection of the death spiral, when you see a shop selling off their machinery in order to pay their bills. You never want to be in that scenario. You should have a cushion that, you know, if you have machine payments, can pay your machine payments for 6 months and can pay your guys for 3-4 months and keep the lights on. It's a lot like the savings in your personal bank account. We may not all be able to do it, but you should try to have a few months of living expenses in your bank account. The same should go for your business, because if that bad time comes and you're not ready for it, you're gonna have to do some things that are gonna damage your business in the long term just to make it through the short term. So it's important, if you have these good times, put some aside, save some money, because it's gonna end, okay? I would like to know in the comments below what tips you guys have for when your shop is overloaded. What are some things you do to keep it rolling? What are some things you do to mitigate it and manage expectations? What are some things you do to help your guys get through that? Let us know in the comments below, because I would love to hear it. And as always, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications below to make sure you never miss a video. Thank you very much for watching, guys. You take care.